What's going on, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm your host, Robert Durden. In this episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Kyle Kulinski going on Joe Rogan's show. Specifically, I'm going to be kind of critiquing Joe Rogan's critique of socialized medicine. And as you guys know, I have a background in medicine. That's what I used to do before I started doing this show. I was a chiropractor for 5 years, working with insurance, working in high volume practice. And then I was out of work because of COVID, and I'm probably not going back, but I do have a background in a lot of this stuff, so I have a leg to stand on when talking about it. And I want to be clear up front, I'm not really going after Rogan. I think he's at least an honest person. I just think that because he happens to be very, very wealthy, and because he happens to be connected to a lot of professional athletes, that he has a bit of a silly argument against socialized medicine. I'm going to point out exactly why that is and why it makes sense that Rogan has these views. So first and foremost, Kyle drops the usual knowledge. He talks about the UMass Amherst study, which showed that Medicare for All would save us like $5 trillion over a decade. And the first thing Joe says is, well, you can't trust anything that comes from UMass Amherst. It's a socialist hellhole. Like, everybody around there is ultra liberal, ultra progressive hipster. And I'm like, on face value, that's ridiculous, because like, just assuming that simply because a university happens to be in a certain part of the United States does not mean that university just adopts like the political leanings in its research of the people who happen to live around the university and like taint their results in a partisan way. It's ridiculous. And it's, of course, exactly the type of thing that somebody like Rogan would think. It's like, no, dude, if something comes out from University of Mississippi or Oregon or Maine or Michigan or Colorado or California, if the study's done well by people who are in the field, it has nothing to do with the politics of the place that they happen to be doing research in, dude. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. Second thing, or what I would have said as if I were Kyle, is I would have been like, okay, fine. The Koch study that is highly right-wing, funded by the Koch brothers, highly right-wing, said that it would still save $2 trillion minimum, and they were absolutely trying to find a way to make it look like it wouldn't save money at all and in fact would cost money, and they still couldn't prove it. So even if I grant you that some of these things are biased, and the Koch study is far worse as far as the way that they calculated it in terms of accuracy, in my opinion, because it is funded by the Koch brothers, even if I granted you that they're equally biased, we'll meet in the middle and say that it saves maybe $3.5 trillion over 10 years. That's, $350 billion a year, Joe. That's how I would have pushed back on Joe on that. And then, the argument's over. It's just a matter of how much it saves. And you could make the same argument back to him on right-wing grounds and beat him. The second thing that Rogan alleges is that, and this is a mistake that most people who don't understand like what socialism is make, is he goes, well, what incentive would there be for doctors to become doctors if doctors are going to make the same as quote-unquote firefighters and cops? Any socialist in America right now, no one's advocating that doctors make the same as cops and firefighters. It's a childish thing to say, and Kulinski's he's too kind to say that, and he respects Rogan too much to push back. But it's like, dude, no, nobody ever has said that doctors are going to make the same amount as, teachers or cops or firefighters. Now, I want firefighters and teachers and cops to make more money, and I want them to be more highly trained, and I think we can do that in this system. But, an 8-year doctor is not going to make the same amount as a 10-year doctor or a 12-year doctor. There's always going to be more of a demand and more money paid into what you do, especially if you're in medicine, depending on how specialized you are and how much training it took to get you where you are. Now, I'm a chiropractor. I'm never going to make as much as a dentist. A dentist is never going to make as much as a neurologist, and a neurologist is never going to make as much as a neurosurgeon. The more training you need to get into something, I took 9 years, the more you're going to get paid. I'm never going to make the same as a 12-year or a 14-year doctor, and that's right, that's okay. But there's no system on earth, and there's no way that we would ever get to a system, even in pure communism. I don't think it would be like the doctor makes exactly the same as, we can't get to pure communism, but in the most socialist we can get as a human race, there would be no system where the doctors make the same as the firefighters or the police or the garbage men or whatever. So it's a ridiculous point. Last thing that he says, and this all happens at about the 2-minute mark in this Vanguard clip I'm going to put below. The last thing that he says in the same breath is something like, there's not going to be any specialists that can do these really specialized surgeries for athletes if we don't incentivize those people to become those people. So basically, Rogan's a UFC guy. He's made a ton of money. He's friends with a lot of these athletes, and he talks about this guy who can do ACL reconstruction that works for the Lakers. And he makes the argument like that person never goes into that specialty if there's not an incentive for him to do so. So I'm going to make the comparison, like Tommy John surgery, the elbow surgery that a lot of these pitchers have to get. Tommy John surgery exists only for, it can only be afforded by pro athletes, particularly pitchers, because they're the only people on earth who get the issue. And it's very, very expensive, and only a handful of people can do it, and it was pioneered specifically, basically, to help pro athletes out. So my argument to Joe is twofold. One, doctors become specialists all the time for reasons other than money. Most people become doctors because they like to help people, and there's plenty of other reasons. I know plenty of people that don't make any money as a doctor who are some of the best doctors, and some of the worst doctors I know make a ton of money because they're great at advertising themselves in a capitalist system and making themselves look like specialists, and then they just overcharge because we live in a system where you can do so. So it's not necessarily correlated like how good you are and how much you make, especially not in America. But I digress. The second thing I'd like to say is the reason that those people became Tommy John specialists is not because there was, this country has a good healthcare system that allows that stuff and there was a profit motive there. It's because we have pro athletes in this country. It's the Anthropic Principle. That surgery exists because we have the most pro pitchers who require it, who have the money to pay for it. Therefore, there's a niche to be occupied here in America for people that know how to do that surgery. They can do a handful of them a year and pay all the bills. There will always be that niche in America because there will always be pro sports in America, no matter what our healthcare system looks like. And those people will always, they will always be able to charge more for specialized stuff, especially if they pioneer it and stuff like that. There are other countries that pioneer new things all the time in medicine that have very, very nationalized or very socialized healthcare systems. So doctors become doctors for plenty of other reasons, and I would say more often than not become doctors because they like to help people or because they're interested in it, rather than, simply I just want to make a lot of money and drive a cool car. I don't think there's a lot of doctors like that. So Rogan's wrong on a lot of reasons, or on a lot of levels here. It's kind of silly. Like, if we had no pro sports in this country, there would be no Tommy John surgeons. So the reason Rogan thinks this is because he doesn't want his pro athlete friends and himself to give up A+++ healthcare so that the rest of us can have like A- healthcare. And what I would like to do is just say, Joe, we need to triage a little bit. We can worry about you guys having the ability to get like gold crowns on your teeth and all the facial reconstruction surgery and breast implants and all the plastic surgery stuff. You guys can get all that stuff and all the best healthcare in the world after we cover everybody else. I want everybody to have A- healthcare, and then we'll worry about you guys getting A++ healthcare. But right now, there are millions of people, tens of millions of people who are uninsured in this country. They're getting no healthcare. That's an F. Let's triage so that everybody gets covered, so that we can all go to the dentist and have our eyeglasses taken care of, and so that we can go to the doctor without amassing enormous bills. And then once everybody's got healthcare, we can worry about, you and your elite buddies having the best healthcare on the planet, which you assume will just go away if we had Medicare for all, which it absolutely will not. Those doctors are still going to stay right here. They're not moving overseas to start doing Tommy John surgery in Japan. Like, that's not going to happen. They're going to stay right here. And they're still going to make plenty of money doing that type of stuff. So it's not an either or. We can all be covered, and you elites can still have excellent healthcare. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Rogan is really out of his league when it comes to talking politics like this, because these are kind of childish. Like these points are something I expect out of somebody who just got into politics and who just is parroting talking points, or did maybe a handful of hours of research the day before the interview just to have some pushback. But I don't hold anything against Rogan, because again, I know what he is. He just doesn't want to lose his A+ healthcare. But he's a reasonable guy, so I think pushing back on him and just saying, I'm not against you having the best healthcare in the world, dude. And those doctors that give the best healthcare in the world aren't going to go anywhere if we transfer to Medicare for all. But we do need to focus on the moral angle here, which is getting everybody coverage before you start worrying so much about like pro athletes having access to ultra specialist care so that they can keep going at peak performance. That's like, your triage is off, man. You need to flip those. So it was still a great interview. The Vanguard did a good breakdown. I'm doing my breakdown right now. I highly recommend you actually go and take a look at the whole interview. They talk about some fun stuff. But I wanted to talk about Medicare for all and kind of break that down for you, that interaction. So remember, guys, $5 trillion it'll save over 10 years. And upwards of 60,000 lives a year would be saved, because that's about how many people die yearly due to lack of health care in this country. And, the other thing that it will help tremendously is if you do Medicare for all, then a lot of us youngsters who are going to need it are going to have access to mental health care. Because like I said, guys, diseases of despair, especially in millennials and Gen Z, are running rampant right now. We got wiped out by COVID. The job market is just not there for us. We've been through some of us, me included, have been through 2 collapses of the economy since I've been out of high school. So the diseases of despair in our 2 generations are going to be off the charts here, and we don't have the money to go, myself included, and I used to be a doctor. I can't go see a therapist if I wanted to. And all of us have all these anxieties and depression, panic attacks. Medicare for all would help a lot of us youngsters get our heads straight. And I wish we could get it, but I don't know. Still people out there like Rogan parroting some goofy-ass talking points, I guess. So nothing against them, but those were kind of dumb. So keep fighting the good fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.